Pre-show quid pro quo. Janny, you get one question. It can be any question in the world. It can be who's my favorite painter. It can be about what my favorite flavor of potato chips are. It can be what is my favorite brand of rice. Go ahead, any question in the world, ask it.
What album influenced you the most?
What album influenced me the most? That is an interesting question. I love music. This might sound a bit odd, but I think it was probably, I'm actually just going to say this. Yeah, it was definitely Bob Marley's Legend. Yeah.
What's on that album?
It's all of his greatest hits, so it's Three Little Birds and Jammin' and Buffalo Soldier, I Shot the Sheriff. Yeah, it was the very first CD that I ever got, because I grew up when listening to cassette tapes, right? And we had cassette tapes, and then one Christmas Santa put Bob Marley in my stocking.
Good choice.
Yeah, Santa's got great taste. And so it was my first CD, so the idea of having a CD was very new. And I loved it. It was like, wait, I don't have to fast forward. I can just click the next track, and it would go straight to the next track. But I think I believe I still actually have it. And it's a nostalgic love. It brings me back to a more innocent time, and I like the message that's in there, and it's just a great album. Bob Marley, he's a fantastic, somewhat, I wouldn't say controversial, but yeah, his poop smells, but I just think that for some reason that album is the one that I go to the most. But that's a great question. Thank you for asking it, Jenny. That's a wonderful question.
I really like Bob Marley too. It's really positive music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to What Magic Is This? A podcast that wonders if you've checked out those pipes on Pan. If you check them out, they're pretty cool pipes. My name is Douglas Batchelor, and in this podcast we're going to be talking about magic, the occult, the esoteric, the paranormal, the supernatural, and the weird. And if you've never listened to the podcast before, here's how it goes. I have a guest on my show. I give my guest, before we record, a list of about 25 topics. They get to go through these topics, and they get to pick one, and then I will bring them in, and we'll record it. In this instance, we're going to be recording remotely, because there's something happening in the world right now where we're not supposed to be in each other's company. But truth be told, this is going to be great, because I'm going to be talking with an older friend of mine. I've had people ask, your guests don't do a lot of talking. I say, think of it as a bit of a tutor session. We're talking about a specific topic within magic and the occult. During a tutor session, the tutor themselves will do more of the talking than the student will. So maybe think of it like that. And my guest is a very special guest, as I said. My guest is Jenny. Jenny, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad I'm a special guest.
Yeah, you very much are. So, when I gave you my list of topics, you actually said, Doug, I'm not seeing very many women on here. So you have picked a fantastic person. We're going to be talking about a person today. So this is going to be part of the Fools Gallery. So this is the second Fools Gallery in a row. I did Colin Wilson about 10 days ago. And this week we're going to be doing another member of the Fools Gallery. If you don't know what that is, it's just where we talk about an individual who has added their little special something to the world of magic or the occult, or somebody who's just a very interesting figure. And Janny, you have picked a wonderful figure. I've been actually waiting to talk about this person for a very long period of time. So thank you so much for picking her. It's really awesome. And who knows, this whole month of April might be nothing but Fool's Gallery. I think my next guest might also pick another person. So April Fool's Gallery is what it might be. We'll get to it then. You have chosen Rosaleen Norton. You ready?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Who is Rosaleen Norton? A lot of people have no idea who she is. Rosaleen Miriam Norton, otherwise known as Thorn. What a fucking cool nickname, isn't it? Thorn.
Yeah, that is cool.
They knew how to pick nicknames back in the day, didn't they? I don't know if she got that herself or if somebody gave that to her, but Rosaleen Norton, she is an artist as well as an occultist, and it's kind of up to debate what she was more of, but I think the two were very intertwined in an extremely cool way. She was known as the Witch of King's Cross. To a lot of people, especially those at the time, she had her own coven of witches, and she was highly devoted to the Greek god Pan, who we will talk about in a little bit. She was controversial for her time, that much can be assured. But a re-examination of her work and practice a decade after her life ended thrust her back into the spotlight for a little bit, thankfully. It made sure that Rosaleen wouldn't be forgotten, because for a lot of people, I don't think they know who she is, and she is a very interesting character. So, with that, we are going to go into a little bit of a biography of Rosaleen Norton. She was born in 1917 during a thunderstorm in Dunedin, New Zealand, which is on the South Island of New Zealand, I believe. Her father was a naval captain and wasn't around for very long periods of time in her life. He was always out to sea. And on a strange note, her father's cousin was Ralph Vaughan Williams. Do you know who Ralph Vaughan Williams is?
No.
He's a composer, a very famous composer. He did The Lark Ascending, and he also did Fantasia on a theme of, I believe, Thomas Tallis. You've definitely heard Vaughan Williams' music. It's like this, specifically Fantasia is like the saddest song. It's like, oh, it's that song that makes you instantly feel sad. Wonderful. Anyways, yes, her father was a cousin. Her mother was a bit of a homebody. She stayed at home. According to Rosaleen, she was very emotional. She didn't get along with her mother very much at all. At the age of 8 years old, the family moved from New Zealand to Sydney, Australia, in New South Wales. As mentioned, she had issues with her mom. The more important figures in her life, according to Rosaleen, would have been her sister and her aunt. She definitely did not like spending time at home. She had a tent that she would put on her front lawn where she would stay most of the time when she had to be at home. And there was a spider that was at the entrance of her tent that was her pet. And she would also adopt animals within the area and feed them and take care of them. So she really did like nature. This started from a very early age. She went to school, did not do very well in school. She was expelled. A note given from her teacher to her mother said that Rosaleen had a depraved nature which could corrupt the innocence of the other girls. So what do you think she did back in the day? Do you think she was burning things, or do you just think that she was maybe just didn't say please or thank you? Because
maybe she was drawing naughty pictures even back then.
You know what? Could be. But we have to understand that a lot of us might think of Australia being, even nowadays, a bit conservative. Back in the day, it was a very conservative place. So, yes, her teacher did not like her. She was always artistic. We have to understand that she was always drawing and doing, dabbling with arts. And she also dabbled within the occult. More on that in a little bit. But she eventually was able to get into East Sydney Technical College. She was there for 2 years. Apparently her professors and the people that were there, they actually liked her. They said that she was a very nice person and technically very proficient and loved art. After she got out of that, she had several menial jobs. I'm not really going to go into it. She did sell pictures on the sidewalks to people that would want to pay, and this was not very ladylike at all. But she married in 1940. The marriage wasn't a happy one. Her husband eventually became a soldier enlisted in the army, and he went to fight in the war. While he was gone, Rosaleen didn't do so well. I mean, you know what? She didn't do poorly, but she had to live in a stable for a little while.
That's terrible.
Yeah. But here's the thing about Rosaleen, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. She always made the best of whatever situation she was. She was a very independent woman, which for a lot of people would have been somewhat scary, but she just kind of took life as it was and just did her thing. So it's definitely a figure to look up to in that regard, for sure. They got divorced. The divorce took a long time to get finalized, a long time. I believe she wasn't divorced until 1951. More art. She was always doing art. The art started to take on a bit more of a pagan tone, and she was very influenced by the Surrealist movement. She thought that the Surrealists had something special, so she took a lot from them. She met Gavin Greenlees. who became her lover throughout her entire life. And he helped her put on an exhibition of works, of her paintings. And there was a police raid, and they confiscated 4 of her works of art as they were seen as being obscene. She eventually took the police organization to court and won her court case. And guess how much she won?
How much?
£4.
What?
£4, yeah. But back in the day, that could buy you a jumbo jet, you realize.
I guess. At least a bunch of paint.
At least she could definitely get the best of paints around at the time. Exactly. She eventually found her place of residence, which would be King's Cross. Now, King's Cross at the time, every town's got a King's Cross. It was a... King's Cross would definitely be considered a red light district. Nowadays, it's seemingly perfectly fine. It's been gentrified like pretty much every other place. But, it was an entertainment district, and all of the seedier side of Sydney was in King's Cross. And people,
I thought it was where all the artists lived.
As well, yes. There were a lot of bohemians. Yeah, it definitely attracted the more interesting members of society, but it was also known as a place people could go to have a good time, if you will, all the time. People that visited her in King's Cross, they said that her house was just adorned with all of the crazy, weird occult stuff. She had altars everywhere. I think she had like 3 altars and strange statues. But she definitely did that thing that most good occultists do, just adorn their house with weird bric-a-brac and whatnot. At least I know that I do. So.
Do you have an altar?
I have about 4. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes they change. Sometimes a lot of them are mainly saint-based, but one saint is not doing very good. I put him away, and then another saint moves up. Anyways, yes, I have about 4 or 5 altars, and I think every home should have an altar, at least.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have an altar?
Kind of.
Yeah.
I usually have altars that are more to my self, like my creative self or my feminine self or whatever self I'm trying to promote at the time.
Because you're an artist as well, are you not?
Yeah, I am.
What's
That's why I could relate to her, because I make erotic art as well, and I think people are still not totally accepting of that.
No, really, eh? But you think they'd definitely be a little bit better than they were back in the day with the such.
Oh
things.
yeah, I read that they actually did like an exhibit of her work in Australia, I think, in 2000.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, people are a little bit more open-minded, but there's still definitely this huge culture, especially online, of not even online. People are just, especially when it's women who are making erotic art, people just think it's porn, and therefore it's bad. Right?
Yeah, there's still some distance left to run in that fight. There certainly is. But someday, fingers crossed, right? According to people that would visit them, at her and Gavin Greenlee's, they would say that their house was, it was a bit interesting, but they were the nicest people. They were very welcoming. They apparently were fun people to be around and very kind in that regard. Other people had different ideas. A publisher was... because of the court case, I was very interested in Rosaline's art and eventually produced a book of Rosaline's artwork with Gavin's poetry. And what happened? Of course, more police involvement. Copies of the book, they would go into the shop and then they would black out some of the images. Nope, this is obscene, this is obscene. And I believe only about 500 copies of this book were printed. The copies that made it to the United States were burned as soon as they got there. They got there and then they went straight into the bonfire. So
yeah. Imagine that's the 50s. That was so ballsy of them to do that back then.
Yeah, they just stopped the Nazis from burning books, and then they took Rosaline's work. The U.S. government been doing some burning of their own.
No, what I mean, I think it was really badass for her to make art like that and for it to be published, given that people were so conservative back then.
Very much so, but
that was very brave of them.
Very brave, but I don't know if it was released because they thought that they could make some money off of a controversial figure. But from what I've read, the publisher was very I think you're an important artist. I think that what you're doing is important, and you're very good. Let's publish a book, and you can have some poetry in there. And they went for it. Yeah, so I think I think the art won out in the end. But copies of this book, don't even bother trying to find a copy of this book. I think I found one that was up for auction about 8 years ago, and it went for an obscene amount of money. Not in the millions, but a couple thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
The police involvement in her life would be somewhat constant for a period of time. In 1955, an adolescent was arrested because she swore at a police officer. This young teenager, what could possibly corrupt them and make them want to swear at an officer of the law? And she said that she was corrupted by Rosaleen Norton at a black satanic mass, and that's when the tabloids got involved. From here on in, they basically created a bit of a witch hunt for Rosaleen. She became a tabloid darling, whether she liked it or not. I think in some respects she kind of did. She definitely was in the tabloids for a long period of time. The teenager eventually said that she made absolutely everything up, but of course everybody wanted to see the Witch of King's Cross, and there were people there were even friends that she would invite over that would take pictures, like, oh, can I take a picture of your altar to Pan? And she'd be like, sure. And then they'd try to sell it to a newspaper tabloid for like £200 at the time. She got £4 from a court case. These people were trying to sell it for £200. So, yeah, people.
That's terrible.
Yeah, she couldn't stay out of the tabloids. Oh, also, this teen said that Rosaleen would sacrifice animals, which is entirely untrue. Rosaleen loved animals more than anything. Again, she had a pet spider. She truly felt a kinship. There was a restaurant that not too long after they put some artwork up of Rosaleen's, police got involved again. They took the paintings down. They closed it up, and the tabloids really descended on her. People were trying to use her name and her image to get money, and truth be told, she was actually quite brave about it. There are interviews with her. They're short, but you can find them online. She seems very normal, well-spoken, wondering why people think that she's a big deal. She's just like I just do strange things, and I'm an artist and whatnot. But the final major part of her life was involving a English orchestral conductor, Sir Eugene Goosens. He met up with Rosaleen Norton and Gavin and loved what they did, and eventually the three of them kind of created a love triangle. He would talk to Rosaleen quite often about Aleister Crowley and the Goetia, which was the major, pretty much the only grimoire that you'd buy at the time. But anyways, his life spiraled out of control as he was caught bringing obscene material, pictures from London to Sydney. He lost his job as a conductor. He went downhill, and it was very unfortunate. And they had a bit of a falling out with Gavin and Rosaleen. In 1955, Gavin Greenlees, he had a nervous breakdown, and he had to be institutionalized in an asylum and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Rosaleen, the kind, generous person that she was, she tried to make it work. She would go visit him as often as she could. Eventually, he was released. That did not go very well because he tried to murder Rosaleen with a knife. Yeah, he definitely had some demons. Yeah, but he did outlive her. But Rosaleen, the tabloids eventually just went away. She became just another eccentric, and she became somewhat reclusive. She moved around quite a bit, but she tried to stay in King's Cross as much as she could. Quiet existence, and no tabloids, and she died in 1979 from colon cancer. One thing that she did say is that she never stopped being a witch or an occultist. That stayed with her till the end of her life. And I believe her last words would have been, "I came into this world bravely, and I'm going to be leaving it brave." Yeah, that's the life of Rosaleen Norton. Interesting, to say the least. So here's why you guys all tuned in. So let's talk about the magical brand that Rosaleen followed. Rosaleen was a pantheist. Janny, what is a pantheist?
Based on what I've read, I think it's somebody who thinks that nature is a reflection of God and that nature is God, as opposed to God being something that's separate.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty much it. Yeah. The pantheism is everything in existence is part of an all-encompassing transcendent God, or the universe equals God, right? So that's
what I believe.
Yeah, you sent me a text before we recorded, basically saying, "Oh, pantheism. This idea has been popular for. I don't believe it was coined until about 1657, but
okay.
But a lot of people, at least people that I know, they're not hardcore atheists or hardcore agnostics. This is more. I think more people consider this to be their underlying spirituality. They just think that, look, everything is God. God is within everything, and the universe is God in some way. So this was Rosaleen Stees. In college, as I mentioned, she started getting involved in the occult. Now, I can't even imagine how hard it would have been to get occult books back in like the 40s and 50s. So it was probably the more contemporary relevant stuff. So she definitely had the books of Aleister Crowley, Dion Fortune, who was a contemporary of Crowley, and Eliphas Levi, who I've talked about in a previous episode. She could get what she could get, and it was very interesting to her. In 1940, she started experimenting with automatic drawing via self-hypnosis. So automatic drawing is basically entering into a trance state or really calming yourself down and putting a pen on paper and just letting whatever your hand feels like it wants to do. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and it's wonderful. I love automatic drawing. And she basically said that she would go into a different place, different plane of existence. A lot of her automatic drawings would later become her paintings. Or she said that she would do these trance states and eventually she would have visions. And yeah, so she got a lot of her art from this style of automatic drawing. She probably got her worship of Pan from Aleister Crowley. Actually, she definitely got it. I had to remind myself, like, Crowley, Pan was a big thing. I think we make more of it than we should, because there's all the pictures of Aleister Crowley doing the weird goat horns on the side of his head, that picture that everybody fucking uses for Aleister Crowley. He made a goat fuck his girlfriend in Sicily. Anyways, that's a totally different episode, but it happened. Pan was a bit of a hobby to Aleister Crowley. For Rosaleen, Pan was like a lifestyle. So Pan is he's kind of the god of nature for Greeks. He lived in Arcadia, which with the satyrs that are the kind of half goat, so goat legs. And
was he really a god?
Yeah, he was a god. Yeah,
he was a god.
Yeah, certainly was. Yeah, known as the god of the shepherds and of herds and of nature and fecundity. He's a very male god. If you want to deep dive on this, look up artistic representations of Pan. They're really interesting. Especially there's one, I think, of Pan actually fucking a goat on its back. Anyways, Pan...
Was he also like a trickster?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Pan is a very, I'm going to say, late 19th century, early 20th century deity. When people found Pan, it's like, ooh, Pan, he's the true god of the world thing. And this is what Rosaleen definitely bought into.
And when the devil is depicted with horns, isn't that Pan? Like, doesn't that come from Pan?
It's not the A to B that, Pan had horns, so now the devil has horns. There's some other stuff involved there, but that's a totally different episode. Also, what was happening at the time, there was a lot of, I'd say, the occult from about the early 20th century to maybe the late 70s was the psychological angle, in which they would say that, and I know Dion Fortune was very big on this, is that magic is merely wayward psychology. These things, these devils and these deities, they only exist in your mind. They're only aspects of your ego and blah blah blah. And Rosaleen Norton thankfully disagreed entirely. She said that these things are outside of us. These weird deities that I contact in my visions, they're not in my head. Like, they have an agency all their own. Yeah, and I love this about Rosaleen.
You seem to believe the same thing.
Sometimes. No. I definitely get on board with this. It's a very. She said that these are definitely outside of us, and she also said that it's easier to call on them when you realize that they're outside of you. And she had tons of figures that she would talk to. Pan would be one of them. Lucifer was one who she said wasn't the devil, wasn't bad. She called Lucifer the adversary, the balancer, right? Like he's there as a trickster more than God's awesome opponent.
It's interesting. I've heard that before, not from her specifically, but like I've been quite involved in like the new age sort of community. I taught yoga, etc., etc. So I've heard that idea before of the devil being like the trickster and the one who kind of like shows you what you need to see in order to overcome your ego, because we have this tendency to kind of like think that we're like all that. You know,
that we do.
Yeah. And I remember I read that in that article about Rosaleen as well.
Yeah.
That's how her interpretation of the devil.
The devil as a trickster is kind of where I go, but we have to remember that I think somebody, I forget where I heard it, but somebody said, don't declaw the tricksters or the devil. Like they still have power, right? Like we tend to think of tricksters as like jesters. It's like, no, they have a capacity for good, and they also have an amazing capacity for things that are very bad. So the adversary is still an adversary to Rosaleen, right?
And so if Pan is also a trickster, then does Pan also have that quality that he can be like very bad?
Yes, absolutely. She was attracted to these trickster figures, and she liked them because they weren't overly one thing specifically. They existed in many different forms, and it wasn't easy to just say, oh, that god or that deity is evil. She really liked things that would be multifaceted. I'll just put it that way, right? They weren't as simple, oh, that's the god of good, or that's the god of bad. And lastly, she really liked Hecate, three-headed god. She's underworld deity, and bearing a torch. She can be a god of darkness, but because she carries a torch, she can be the god of light. Of all the figures that Rosaleen met in her visions, Hecate, who's very popular now, I get tons of people writing me, like, just do Hecate. I want you to do an episode on Hecate and the dark goddess, and I will. Just everybody calm down. We're taking baby steps with this podcast. I will definitely get to Hecate. For Rosaleen, Hecate was a very imposing figure. Like it's strange that the major figures that she contacted, it was a female one that seemed the most imposing to her. That seemed, I don't know how to place this one at all. So I find that very, very interesting. Her art is definitely very deity and spirit centric. If you've seen any of her work, it's very cool to see that she's got these figures. But she didn't think that the only place to converse with these beings was on the astral or within these higher dimensions. She said that was just one place. She definitely didn't relegate it to the subjective. She said, oh no, they're all around me constantly. She had poltergeists in her house. She said that animals can see spirits way easier than we can. I always notice when they see them, and I know when they see them. So she didn't just say that it was in when she would be doing her traveling. She said, no, that's just one place. You don't only see human beings in restaurants, right? But that's one place where you definitely can go to see them. So that's the way to think about it.
So did she believe then like the spirit world is kind of like interwoven with our world? Like it's pretty much like the same?
Yes, she didn't blatantly put it like that, but I would suspect so, yes. Absolutely. Her personalized practice. There's about 4 things. The first is trance. The second would be sex magic. That's why you're all here, right? The third would be rituals. And then the fourth, I'm just going to call witchy stuff. So,
Witchy stuff.
Witchy stuff. Let's get into the trance. Rosaleen was very good at trance and journeying. I like calling it journeying more than anything else. I think it's a more appropriate term. I don't like the term astral travel. Soul flight's a little bit better, but I enjoy the idea of journeying, be it hypnagogia or soul flight or active imagination. Journeying. Let's just call it journeying. She was incredibly good at it. She loved nature. She would go out into trees, and she would go into a trance state. She would go into a trance state just by being under a tree for a couple of minutes. She practiced. She worked at it. She really, really did, and she would really get into it. There's people that, her friends, that talked to later biographers, that said that sometimes she would be in these strange trance states for 5 days.
Wow.
Like she would go full out. For people that are just starting to get into journeying in trance, it takes work. And it also takes a lot of time. That Rosaleen did a trance for 5 days, that's insane. That's a huge amount of time. I wish more artists would take note of using these trance states, or even getting yourself into a trance. You don't have to do any occult shit. You can induce through breathing or concentration or focus or contemplation. You can get into these trance states, and it's incredibly beneficial to art. It really, really is. Anyway, more on that in a little bit. So let's
to life.
Yeah, I could talk for hours, and eventually I will do an episode on journeying and trance and whatnot. But let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about sex magic, to be specific. So she did have a coven. Their numbers, they differ. Some people were like, she didn't have a coven. She just had friends that would come over and do some stuff. There's other people that said that she had like less than 20, more than 7. We're not really going to know. I don't think they had a membership card or anything like that. But
wouldn't it covered be friends who come over and do stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. Yeah, there's stories of, it would be Gavin and it would be Rosaleen and they'd be doing weird stuff and just her friends would be sitting on the couch just having tea. I think I'm going to take Rosaleen's word for this, but yeah, she definitely had friends that would help with the rituals, and there would definitely be some sex magic involved, because why not? I mean, what else is there to do in Australia? I'm sorry, Australia. I definitely don't mean that in any way, shape, or form. She was definitely a bisexual, absolutely. And she would use sex magic. It was very Crowleyan to get into states of ecstasy. The idea of taboos and doing something naughty would add a little bit of special spice to the rituals themselves. And to get into a state of ecstasy or an altered state of consciousness. She mentioned that she preferred sex with gay men. She said that she got the most out of that because she could dominate them, that she would be the dominant one, and it would put her into a place of power. And she definitely enjoyed bondage, domination, and sadomasochism. I wanted to ask Jenny, what do you think people, besides the obvious answers, but what is the main attraction or pull behind something like domination in sex? Like, what's the big thing? Is it working through childhood trauma? Because I've heard that before, and it's like not everybody has that. I don't know if it's entirely triggered by childhood. Something happened. Some people just like domination.
I mean, I feel for me, it's the ability to sort of step outside of the constraints of like who you think you are and to become like somebody else, sometimes even like an idealized form of yourself, a form of yourself that doesn't have fear and doesn't have the same limitations, a side of yourself that's like willing to like face your fears and move past them.
So you're stepping outside of the constraints by stepping into constraints is what you're saying?
If that's what turns you on.
Yeah, the BDSM thing was something that Rosaleen was definitely very much into. She also enjoyed cunnilingus with lesbian women and gay men. That's where she tended to get most of her power. She liked the idea of power, which is strange because, again, when you see interviews with her, she is white bread normal. Like, besides her very strange eyebrows and somewhat odd looking teeth, I'm not passing judgment in any way, but she seemed like a pretty normal person. But
she lived in a time when like women were like so constrained, and like in order for her to be as independent as she was, like she probably had to be like a very like powerful woman, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So probably like tapping into that power through, for example, domination probably helped her in that regard.
I think so, for sure. Absolutely. Again, Aleister Crowley was very big. She also got a lot of her sex magic from what was considered at the time Kundalini, at least their understanding of Kundalini. So yeah, she definitely did some mixing of stuff. Rituals. Again, her home, all these altars. She had, I think, 3 altars. They had pictures of Pan and Hecate and Lucifer. She was very big into the Qliphoth, which is kind of like the reverse tree of life. Also somewhat big at the time. She liked the darker stuff. Like she liked that other flip. Again, the things that aren't just black and white. She was very big into that. She definitely had altars. She definitely did stuff. There's stories of people just coming over and then she's in the middle of a ritual. She's doing her thing. A lot of the times they talk about having masks, and her masks are actually incredibly cool. I don't know if any have survived. What is the fun with masks, do you think?
I think it's stepping into a different character.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of us were really stuck in this idea of like who we are, and like we just like build these walls around ourselves, and BDSM, masks, like all of this role play, it just helps you to let go of that, to be somebody else.
Right. Yeah. No, and the idea, a lot of people will say, like, you're just pretending and whatnot, but in a way it is a form of evocation to become something not better, maybe, but better, but just something different for a while, and to take in, certainly for Rosaleen, she would probably take in a lot of the spirits that she said were around her and just used it as an influence or a force to become something better or different, I think. And yeah, her masks are incredibly interesting in this regard.
Do you believe that we are who we think we are?
Oh, emphatically no.
No, but what I mean is like who you are.
Right.
Do you think that like your view of yourself is objective, or do you think that you behave according to some sort of like self-created script?
I think it exists on a spectrum. I think that a lot of times my subjective world gets put into who I objectively put myself out as in the world, but I know that I definitely have things that I don't know where I got them from. Yeah, no, it's a really strange question, and a lot of my graces are, I know, from early behaviors taught, early behaviors gained, but I don't think, I mean, and this goes to like the heart of the occult, is like, do we actually really know who we are? And that's maybe, yeah. But I think that's why a lot of people are interested in the cult. Even Carl Jung said, and Jung's big thing was that when he would talk to Philemon was the one that told him, so the things that I'm thinking don't belong to me. Interesting. That was his biggest like, aha. And I think that a lot of occultists buy into this. I certainly do. The things I think don't belong to me, strangely enough. And so that's what we like to play with. And I really love that about the occult. I really, really do. The rituals were tied in with trance. She would go into trance-like states while doing rituals and coming out of rituals. So people do talk about when they are with Rosaline that the rituals were a very important part of her life. They were daily, and they, according to them, till the end of her life, she just kept doing them. She never relented. So she was the real deal. I think people need to realize that she definitely walked the walk, very much so. And these deities were real to her. They were very, very real to her. They were part of her life, and they were part of life if only other people could see. Witchy stuff. She made no bones about the fact that she would curse people. She was like, yep, I'll curse people. She didn't see it as like a malefic thing to do. She thought of it as balancing. It's like just putting some balance back into the universe, you know? Sometimes you got to fight fire with fire. She didn't say such things, but she definitely said that she did not view cursing as being bad. She would get some money by crafting hexes for people and for clients, you know? And so, yeah, witch got to do what a witch got to do. There you go. People don't realize this, but witchcraft was outlawed in New South Wales until 1971. That's actually quite recent. So she was playing with fire, and people, specifically after the tabloids had their fun, they just considered Rosaline that eccentric person. She was the witch of King's Cross. You know, if she was maybe 40 years before her time, she would have gotten into a ton of trouble.
Should have been burned at the stake.
Yes, should have been, exactly. But so Crowley and Dion Fortune were the foundations that Rosaleen Norton had, but eventually she found her own groove, found her own magical life, and I want people to take note of this. Rosaleen lived very simply. She made do with what she had. She was very poor at many points in her life, but she never seemed to be down on herself. She shares a lot with another occult artist who I will talk about eventually, Austin Osman Spare. They would be very poor. They love their art, and it's almost like that was the only thing that they could do. It's the only thing that they wanted to do, and sometimes to their detriment. When asked why witchcraft, Rosaleen answered the journalist by basically saying that I get a life that holds infinite possibilities and is entirely satisfying to me in all planes of consciousness. Yeah, I like that. I do like Rosaleen Norton quite a bit, and I hope that people listening to this episode will find a bit more to look up about Rosaleen. Let's talk about her art. Her art is good. I enjoy her art. She's certainly not as naturally gifted as some other occult artists. She's certainly better than Aleister Crowley. I'll just put it that way. Crowley's art is pretty awful. If you just look at it and you're not a fan, you'll say it looks like a manual for Dungeons and Dragons from 1987. It really has that look to it, but look a little bit closer. You do get, though, that it was coming from a very real, very special place for Rosaleen, and I particularly like her paintings that have a whirling to them. She's got ones where it looks like there's lines. They're good. They look almost like a diamond or a star, but the ones that really strike me are ones where the whole canvas just seems to be whirling. And the reason that's interesting to me is, again, she was very big into trance states. I know that I'm going into a trance when things feel like they're spinning. I'll put it this way. Usually my eyes are closed. It's a very odd feeling. It literally feels like my body is whirling. And Rosaleen Again, definitely walked the walk. The pictures that really stand out for me are the ones that just have this whirling energy to them. I think that those are the ones where she had a true vision, and she definitely was like, I gotta put that down on paper. And they'll usually have, naked women hugging Black Panthers and stuff like that, and there's all these odd goblins. I think through her art, that is evidence that she was not just saying, oh yeah, I go into trances. She knew what she was doing. So I think that her art is certainly something that's worth looking into. There's something for everybody. There really is. And some of it's very, specifically her black and white images, she's good at what she's doing. She really is. And there's definitely things for people to look into. Some figures, I think she certainly saw. Like there's without a doubt some of the, specifically the ones on Lucifer and Pan, she definitely gave them a personality, and she didn't just paint them once. Like it was an ongoing thing for her. I have zero doubt that she did not encounter these beings that she talked about. And a notorious art critic in 1970 said that Rosaleen Norton was one of Australia's finest artists, which was a bit late, seeing as how she died in 1979 would have helped a lot when she was going through her whole tabloid crisis and whatnot. And it wasn't just one artist. And again, there were exhibits done after she passed away where people said she's fantastic. She's really, really good. So, and yet another instance of people being recognized long after they're gone for their contribution to the world. It's
that
sad.
Tends to happen with a lot of art. Hey?
Oh, it's very sad. It really is sad. But truthfully, the good stuff is eternal. I really think that. And it's a testament to great art and to great artists. Don't be sad about it. This isn't for this time. William Blake always used to talk about that he did his art for children of a future age, and I love that. My art is for children of a future. He knew right off the get-go that people were going to hate his stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Towards the end of her life, her art is fucking awesome. And this is not the stuff that you will see on normal Google images. It takes a while to go through all the websites to find Rosaleen's art. But the art towards her end of her life, I think there's one that she did on the Three Fates. It's ridiculous. So she got better. She did not just stop doing art. She actually constantly working is amazing. It's really dark, but the colors are incredibly vibrant. The use of blacks and almost like a neon yellow, it's great stuff. I love it to death. But
nice.
Yeah, her interviews, she said that art is a medium for tapping into the wondrous alternative reality. So it went both ways for her. And make no mistake, much of her art was of a provocative nature. It has to be said, she knew what she was doing. She wasn't a dummy. Some figures, it's a bit phallic, and there's a lot of boobs and all of that fun stuff. But,
not boobs.
Boobs!
What?
The vapors, yes. So maybe let's take a little bit of a detour here. Let's talk about what's shocking. I'm trying to think, what is shocking anymore? Because to me and to most of us now, Rosaleen would seem pretty vanilla, right? And this was just over 70 years ago. So what actually is shocking anymore? And I started to think...
Would she be vanilla? I don't know. I don't know if she would be considered vanilla.
No, you don't think so?
No, I mean, I think people like to think that they're very progressive, but I don't know. I think people are still really uncomfortable with any sex that's like outside of like the heteronormative sort of monogamous norm.
Yeah. I think we're getting better, though. We're definitely better than what we were. I was trying to think if there could be any occult figures that would be shocking anymore. And it really got me thinking, specifically researching for this episode. There's certainly derision from within the occult community. Absolutely. I mean, there's somebody that just released a book. I think it's called Pop Magic. And people are talking about it a lot within the occult world because how dare he's using magic to, not how dare he, they're not going like that, but it's all about trying to talk to celebrities and this kind of stuff. And there's going to be controversy within the occult. Occultists love debating and they like deciding what occult is, whose version of the occult is the best.
Oh, no.
It's a bit tired, but yeah.
That sounds like kind of compare dicks or something.
Oh, absolutely. You know what I think would be quite shocking is that if a scientist basically, like somebody, Neil deGrasse Tyson or Richard Dawkins came out and just said, oh, by the way, the side effects are real. I think that would actually be like what? Like they'd try to ostracise him and shove him into a box. He just went crazy. Like Stephen Hawking was great until he started talking about how people can talk to each other through their minds. I think that might shock. I really don't know. I don't know if we can find things shocking anymore.
Oh, come on. Pish.
What's shocking? Give me
I
an example.
disagree.
What do you think would be shocking these days?
I mean, people are still shocked by orgies.
The
I
ones
think that's still shocking. I mean, they will play it up like, oh no, ha ha ha. But you try to invite them to an orgy. You just try. You just try.
I haven't got that invitation yet.
You'll find out pretty quick what people's limitations are.
No doubt, absolutely. Yeah, there's people still have hang-ups. I'd say so. Definitely.
Oh my god, so many fucking hang-ups.
Yeah. Yep.
I feel like even still, a woman making any kind of sexual content or having any kind of alternative sexuality is still very much like looked down upon. I mean, people make like lip service to being open-minded, but I don't think in reality that they really are.
No, we still have a ways to go. I would agree. I would agree for sure. I don't think that there's very much that occultists can do to be shocking, though. Make no mistake, taboos certainly exist within the occult, and specifically with the kind of occult that I find very popular. Please don't get any ideas, people. Please, please, please. But the goetic magic used to be, specifically with scrying, was you would have a young virginal boy with you. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there would be any hanky-panky, but you would use them to see and talk to the demons or to see the deities. This is something that it has been tabled by quite a few people within the academic circles as well as occultists. But if a magician just came out and basically said that, oh yeah, I use my 11-year-old son to help me with my magic work, I think people would be like, what the fuck? Lock that man up, like, immediately.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely things that in the past were definitely very iffy, extremely iffy, but I don't see anybody doing that. And if they did, they would be shut up pretty damn fast by everybody, probably rightfully so. But most controversy stays within the occult world. It really doesn't cross the threshold into the public sphere. And when it does, it's usually very benign. Things like The Secret. It does happen, but it's quite infrequent, and it's usually just like, somebody wrote a book that you can think things in your mind and then you can make them happen in reality. And then people are like, oh, outrage for a second. Or it's bullshit, and they just forget about it. So we have a lot of things going on right now. But we are living in a world, though, where there is a new religious movement, specifically a little bit further south of Canada and the United States, and that would be Santa Muerte, who would be the, not necessarily a cult, I would say, but yeah, it's Saint Death, praying to the female saint of death.
I didn't know that.
Oh, I could tell you many a story about Santa Muerte. I'm a huge fan.
Oh, nice. That's so cool.
Yes, but it might be the fastest growing new religious movement in the world. Yes, people can find figurines if you go to any bodegas within your town. I've seen her statues in and around Toronto specifically. And yeah, it looks like the Grim Reaper. And yeah, I think people get a little bit like, I don't know. But in Mexico, she's almost, not everywhere, but she's making a really big impact. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. But she's also... She's also getting a little bit declawed these days with movies and TV shows. I know the new Bad Boys movie has her in there, and I think Penny Dreadful is coming out, and Santa Muerte's in there. So yeah, the shitstorm of entertainment is doing a very good job of trying to make her into a benign deity, but she's incredibly popular in Mexico in certain areas. Yeah, I've visited quite a few houses with shrines to her, and I love them. I absolutely.
What do you think is the appeal of her?
She accepts everybody. Death comes to us all. So people that are relegated to the edges of society, she's appealing because she can take them in. And truth be told, it almost seems like she's on a mission. She's just exploded in the last 20 years, basically, and her numbers keep going up and up and up and up and up. Yeah, she's great. I love her. But that's a different episode.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I'll send you some books. Anyways, if we're talking about what's shocking, I do think that death still scares us quite a bit.
Yeah.
Sex scares us, but I do think that death, in a way, scares us.
I agree.
And this podcast was a bit of... I had friends who knew about my magical proclivities before my podcast came out, but once I released my podcast, there's still things that I will not tell my friends that I do, and this is mainly involving necromancy and this kind of stuff, because I think they can be like, okay, Doug believes in some weird shit, but if I told him just, I go to graveyards and do things. I don't dig up bodies. Like, I'm not saying that, but I do think that my more necromantic, which is...
You're not having sex with a dead.
No, I'm not. No.
Okay.
But that's one of those things where even I'm just like, I don't talk to my friends about that stuff. I'm not saying that this is the next bastion of controversial occultism is dealing with death, although I suggest it for everybody. It's like, oh, Doug, you just have an ancestral altar. It's like, I've got jars of graveyard dirt. Anyways, doesn't matter. Moving on. It's still, there's one thing that I think that really scares people and is still somewhat taboo. It was taboo back in the day, the idea of death, and to this day, it is still one of those things that people get really... they put the brakes up real quick when you start talking about it.
I agree. That's really true, actually. That is really true. You really see that, too, when somebody that you care about has died, and then people don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah, we do put life at a complete premium, and it is the most important thing. We do live in a culture that seemingly tries to forget about death, which is funny because a lot of the spirits I do things with are spirits of the dead, the restless dead. Yeah. Not saying that if I just came out and said that I'm the world's greatest necromancer, that would make me a controversial figure in any way, shape, or form, because it's not the only thing that I do, but I still have reservations about telling people. Anyways, we are unlikely to have any figures like Crowley or to a lesser extent Rosaleen Norton. They seem to be very time and culture specific when sex was completely taboo, especially talking about it, and the idea of doing art to amplify different beings or spiritual beings and that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know if the level of shock would be as high as back in the day, but who knows? I don't know if it's going to happen. It might, but yeah, there you go. So what can we learn from Rosaleen? I might sound like a broken record here, but again, it's about your journey, people. So she had her initial influences, as I mentioned, but she branched out and she created her own practices and her own rituals, and it really became hers, and she involved it in her art. And this is something that we need to learn. This is going to be a broken record for most of the figures that I have within the Fool's Gallery, is that they did their own thing. And I know a lot of people, they love their idea of having their magic in a box. I know what I'm doing. It's here. I'll do it. Get out there. Really, there's so much to magic, more than a lifetime to learn, and there's so much stuff, just as many directions as you can. I think that her insistence and the importance of journeying to magic with art, very, very, very important. Her idea that these things, these deities or beings that she meets, they're not in your head. They have their own agency. And the sooner you realize this, the better your magic is. It did not take Norton long to figure this out. And she stuck to it to her dying day. She never said that this, oh, you know what? When I was doing weird stuff, it was just my mind creating these things. She died saying that, no, this stuff is outside me. They have an interiority. Realize this and work with it. But yes, she was a witch to the end. Incredibly brave, as I said. But yeah, watch interviews of her. She does seem very normal. She does look very normal. But then if you look at her art, she was far from normal. Far, 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 far normal. And I love her. I love her to death. She had to do magic. That's another thing, is that she could not have not done magic. It was her life. She couldn't help herself. She needed it. And it was not just part of her identity, but it was actually part of her way to be able to survive and navigate the world, as it will be for a lot of the figures that I cover. But a very curious figure. She does not have a huge legacy, not like a lot of other occultists, outside of her artwork for sure. But I think her nickname is a bit the idea of thorn. She's this prickly presence within the occult that I think that people need to start to take a look at. And they can now, because where to go? There is a wonderful book by Neville Drury called Pan's Daughter. It is one of the better biographies of an occult figure. I really like it, and I believe Neville knew Rosaleen before she passed away, and he treats it with a lot of love. A lot of the people that Neville talks to are friends of Rosaleen, and they have nothing bad to say about her. She sounded like a fantastic person, very down to earth, very talkative, very interesting, not overly egotistical. She did sound like the real deal. It's a great book to go for. Find Pan's Daughter. I believe it's still available and you can order it. Yeah, go with that one. Trying to find books of her art are impossible, and this is just shameful. So you really have to go through the internet to find good quality pictures of her art. I think she is due for somebody to produce a book of her art. So can somebody start a Kickstarter or something, because I think she is an important artist. She is, unfortunately, in the shadow of such people as Austin Osman Spare, who she has a lot of similarities with, lived destitute quite a long period of time. Austin Osman Spare had his death posture and that stuff. Rosaleen had her trances. Yeah, but as much as you want to draw comparisons to Austin Osman Spare, there are some differences, and I think the differences are key. The devil, as they always say, is in the details. And also, I would probably like to hang out with Rosaleen way more than I would Austin Spare. Austin Spare seems somewhat terminally timid and also at the same time strangely self-absorbed. Yeah, I think Rosaleen, she would be pretty fun to have at any kind of a party. So more than anything, what I want people to get from this episode is the idea of the intersections between art and magic and how they can be almost one and the same, but they can help each other. And for this, I'm going to say a book. And this is a book that it does get regularly suggested for if you're starting out in magic. And it is the book for magic and art. It's called Visual Magic by Jan Fries. It's a fantastic book. It really, really is. And it goes through trance states very well and how to get into a trance state. It goes through automatic drawing and sigils. It's got some nice shamanism in there. Problematic word, but it is a short book, but it's packed full of really great material. And I've suggested it to friends that aren't magicians, that are artists, and they actually say, well, thank you. There's some very helpful stuff. But yeah, automatic drawing. It is an underutilized magical technique, and I do suggest it for people that are in a bit of a magical rut. Just pick up a pen, a piece of paper. You already know how to get into a trance state. Give it a shot. And I am going to admit, I am a shit artist. I'm a terrible artist. That's almost where I think that there might be something wrong with me. Like, is there anybody that can be as bad at drawing as I am? When I do some automatic drawings, it's very strange. My automatic drawings I did one maybe about a year ago, and it became a lion's head eventually, and I just let it go, and it was like, fuck, I did that? Unbelievable. So yes, Visual Magic by Jan Fries. He also has a book called Sideways, which you can get into trance states a little bit more, but I definitely suggest Visual Magic. Stick with that. But yeah, automatic drawing, do it, people. It's wonderful, and it's something that you can do at any time. If you know how to meditate and you know how to get into a sub-trance state, give it a shot. Yes, if there's two things that I want people to get from this episode, if you really like Rosaleen Norton, you have to get Pan's Daughter, and if you like the idea of art and magic together, Visual Magic by Jan Fries. So, there's a ton of female occultists out there. A lot of them seem to be there because of the men that they associated with. There are exceptions. I want people to try and find them because they do exist, and they're actually quite wonderful when you do. And this I'm not just talking to women here saying, like, find them, guys as well. But I think that a lot of the figures that need to be rediscovered, a lot of them are female, and a lot of them are women, and female. Fuck. Terrible. Anyways, find them. They're fantastic. Dion Fortune is another one. Look her up. Yes, I think that Rosaleen needs a bit more of a rediscovery, and Neville Drury definitely covered a lot of bases with Pan's Daughter, but I think that a book of Rosaleen's art the world deserves an actual compendium of her artwork because it's good. It's very, very, very good. And with that, that's the end of the episode. Johnny, you made it. Thank you so much for being on. So, for those interested, head to whatmagicisthis.com. There, you can subscribe to iTunes, you can subscribe to Google Play, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio. Guys, if they've got podcasts, I'll be listed. If you have an Android device, just go to my website. You can click a little button. It'll subscribe.
Are you on Spotify?
I am. Yes, I am. She reaches for her phone. I know nobody can see her, but she's going straight. Yes, I am on Spotify. Also on my website, whatmagicisthis.com, you can find Twitter account, which I'm getting a little bit better at. You can find my Instagram account. I don't know what I'm doing there, but I'm giving it a good old college try. And you can find my Facebook account. I don't use it very much, but it's there on my website. I'm going to have show notes. Every episode, I do some show notes. They're really quite great. Please check those out. If you like the podcast or you have any questions, please reach out and talk to me. I'm not a scary person. I'm actually very down to earth, like Rosaleen. And if you have any questions about anything, please reach out and ask. I can answer it. Or if you have any concerns about the show or any questions about the show, or if you just want to tell me that I suck, please go ahead and do such things. But I do this for you guys. I love sharing, and if you love the podcast, try to leave a review for it. You can click those stars, but if you really want to be, a really super person, write a little review for me. I know you've got free time. Don't lie to me. I know everybody's got free time right now. And up until the end of April of 2020, I will have a survey up on my website for which you guys can choose which topics you want to pick. I think I've got about 56 people that have already submitted. That's not a ton of people. I know there's more of you people. Everybody, get on there. Fill out that survey.
I just followed you on Twitter and Spotify now.
My gosh. I've got a new fan, everybody. Perfect. Yes. That was the only reason that I asked you to be on my show. There we go. I did it. with that, we're going to end the show with the post-show quid pro quo, which is where I get to ask you a question. Jani, are you ready?
Okay.
So, this is going to be an interesting one. What is the oddest kink that you've come across? And this is a no judgment thing. It's not like, judging people for their kinks, but it's one that you really went, really?
Wow. What is the oddest kink? Whew. I mean, I come across a lot of kinks, so maybe like my opinion of like what is odd is different from the general public.
Right.
I guess the thing that surprised me the most was like sweaty armpits.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sweaty armpits and sweaty butt crack.
Yeah, I can see that, though. I can definitely see that. I mean, it's not my thing.
Because, I mean, we all spend so much time trying to, like, keep ourselves not smelly.
Right.
Right? Like, deodorant and showering and all that. So to have somebody be like, actually, I don't want you to shower or wear deodorant. I really like the smell of, like, your sweaty armpits.
Hey.
It's unexpected, right? You've been conditioned your whole life to think that this is not erotic, and then somebody is aroused by it.
Hey, man, gladiators used to sell their sweat. I shit you not. So, back in the olden days, yes, gladiators would make some extra money by selling off their sweat. So.
Okay, well, if you want to buy my sweat.
Okay, here's the website. Go to www.johnnysweat. $100
a milliliter.
There you go. Hey, man, people are buying people's dirty bath water, so we're not that far off, right? No judgment. Whatever people...
I did have somebody buy my dirty panties once.
Really? Whatever. I mean, it's fine. You do you, everybody. Really, you do you. All right. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jani. This has been a ton of fun, and I enjoyed myself, and I hope you learned something. And I hope if I was to ask you to come back on the show sometime in the future, you would. Maybe we'll talk about Santa Muerte.
That would be so amazing. I would love that.
Yeah. No, she's incredibly important to me. I'll just put that there. But look her up, everybody. If you don't know, definitely look up Santa Muerte. And with that, that's the show. Come on back in about 10 days. We're going to have another episode for you. This has been What Magic Is This? My name is Doug. Thank you so much for listening. And we will talk at you next time. Stay luminous. Bye-bye. Say bye, Jani.
Bye-bye.